vēlreiz. Nākamā prezentācija sniegs vecākā juridiskā padomniece, kas pārstāv European Center for Press and Media Freedom, Flutura Kusari, kas ir arī valdības komitejas locekle, Coalition Against SLAPPs in Europe. Floor is yours.
Test, is it working? Yes. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Flutura Kusari. I work as a senior legal advisor for the European Center for Press and Media Freedom. Before I start, let me just say thank you very much to the Media Council for initiating the discussion about SLAPPs in Europe, and particularly, I hope I get the surname right, Ms. Rožukalne. I would prefer to call you Anda, because I already feel close to you. Thank you very much for working on this topic. And also I want to thank Ms. Dace Melbarde. We need politicians like you in the European Parliament. I work very closely with the Parliament, and I see all sorts of politicians. To have you here present physically, and to know that you're supporting this topic, it means a lot to us. Thank you so much. So I'm invited here to speak about SLAPPs. Very briefly, the European Center for Press and Media Freedom is based, ECPMF is based in Leipzig. We're financed mainly by the European Commission, but also by other funders. We have a coalition, we're running a coalition with a project called Media Freedom Rapid Response, MFRR. And we provide 3 types of support for journalists. First and foremost, we work on the documentation of threats in Europe. We use 2 platforms, Council of Europe platform on safety of journalists and Mapping Media Freedom. And on yearly basis, we produce annual reports to show press freedom, media freedom in Europe. Secondly, we work a lot on advocacy, and I'll explain our advocacy efforts through the presentation. We work very closely with the European Commission, European Parliament, Council of Europe, but also governments at national level to advocate for better legislation on media freedom. And thirdly, we provide practical support for journalists. By practical support, we mean usually financial support for journalists. So to all Latvian journalists, if you are facing legal actions and you don't have money to pay lawyers' fees, we can help with that. And also in cases when journalists' equipments are destroyed, broken, etc., we have limited but still funds to buy cameras, laptops, etc. So do get in touch in case you need support. Now I'm here to discuss about SLAPPs, and let me just start very briefly, although Anda already mentioned the most important elements of SLAPPs. I'll provide a timeline of events that led to the first European movement on anti-SLAPP, which is the case, but I think it's relevant to know a little bit of the history. This definition that you see here, so SLAPPs as legal actions that are threatened, initiated or pursued as a means of harassing or intimidating their target, and which seek to prevent, restrict or penalize free expression on matters of public interest and the exercise of rights associated with public participation. This is a definition that is drafted by the Council of Europe. It's still not yet final. I'll get to this again, but it's the most comprehensive definition we've had so far. And it is being used especially by civil society to describe what SLAPPs are. It all started on 16th of October 2017. I guess for most of you this picture is familiar, when Daphne Caruana Galizia was assassinated in Malta. Personally, I traveled there as soon as this happened because I wanted first and foremost to show solidarity with the family, and secondly, since Daphne was assassinated, we're monitoring the court cases, and there are a lot of cases around her work and her case. And when I went there, I heard a lot of information about Daphne, about the journalism that she did, the influence she had. For example, it was fascinating for me to hear that her articles were read by 400,000 people during the day. And here it's relevant to mention the population of Malta. It's 500,000 country. So she was that influential. And then family members and some friends of Daphne mentioned the fact that she was facing 49 active defamation lawsuits. And I was astonished. I thought this was not normal, and I thought that if journalists are facing this amount of lawsuit, then the result is very clear. They don't have the time to do what they're supposed to do, journalism, because you have to defend these cases in court. So together with a very small group of people, colleagues from Article 19, EFJ, IPI, etc., we started to discuss with each other. This was in 2018. Just phone calls, nothing formal, on our own time, whether there is anything that we could do. On 10th of April, the person that you see here is David Casa. He is a European member of the European Parliament from Malta and a friend of Daphne. He was one of the first politicians that I can recall that initiated the pressure on the European Commission to deliver something on SLAPPs, to address SLAPPs. So he wrote a letter to the European Commission asking the Commission to act. And if you read that letter, so it was written in 2018, and if you read the letter now, it sounds as if a lot of legal analysis, a lot of preparations were done at that time, but it was not like that. It was just common sense from politicians asking the Commission to act. This is a letter that was sent by Casa, and then he also organized an event in June, so this was a couple of months later, again on SLAPPs, discussing SLAPPs, checking whether there is interest among especially politicians to address this topic. On 4th of, now between June to March 2019, we discussed the need to have legal analysis. Because when we went to the European Commission, staff members and politicians to the European Parliament, they had one request. They said, first and foremost, we don't know whether we have competence. And this is a key word used especially by the European Commission when they are not very willing to address matters on human rights. And secondly, they said they wanted research. They wanted to know whether this is something that happened only to Daphne or whether this was something that was common for a lot of journalists. Here we are at the Aberdeen University, where this professor, Justin Burge, is presenting the first legal analysis, which said the EU has competencies to legislate SLAPPs. After that, we organized an event in the Parliament in Brussels because we wanted to test whether, again, there was political will and interest to address SLAPPs. We used the legal analysis from Aberdeen University to organize this event. The idea was, it was organized by ECPMF, the idea was to have 20 people, 100 registered. It was full room with politicians, lawyers, civil society, people interested in regulating SLAPPs. Now, as I said, this whole discussion about SLAPPs started from 5 or 6 people. The problem was that first and foremost, we didn't have time. So personally, so I was pregnant. It was COVID. I didn't have the expertise on the EU law. So it was all about just discussing with each other, and we were somehow stuck because we didn't know how to proceed. And then we were very lucky to have Greenpeace International joining the efforts. They have led the anti-SLAPP work in the United States. So they had expertise, they had knowledge, and they knew how to mobilize individuals in Europe. Here we are just a few days before the global lockdown of COVID in Amsterdam, where we gathered and we wrote a strategy. It was a very simple strategy, how to advocate before the European Commission, European Parliament, and Council of Europe to legislate SLAPPs. Now, as I mentioned, every time we contacted with politicians, they wanted evidence. Politicians from Germany, Austria, Netherlands, and other countries, they said, we can't legislate an issue if it is a matter of Maltese legislation only. And this is very common. I think this is normal. So what we did is we used the Council of Europe platform on safety of journalists. Interpreters, can you still follow me? Yes? Okay, thank you. So we use the Council of Europe platform on safety of journalists to document threats. When we heard that a journalist was being sued, we checked the facts of the case, the reporting that was done by journalists, and based on our knowledge, expertise, we decided whether a case was a SLAPP or not. So we started in 2020, and then every year there was a dedicated chapter on SLAPP cases. Again, this was not enough, especially for the Council of Europe. We wrote letters to them, and we said, well, this needs to be regulated, especially with a self-standing recommendation. It's not that we heard back initially, but then we had Dunja Mijatović, the Human Rights Commissioner of Council of Europe, who is absolutely an amazing woman. She has experience with OSCE on media freedom, so it was easy to convince her that this was a problem. She wrote this article, and this blog article opinion that she wrote mobilized the entire Council of Europe to address SLAPPs. On 1st of December, we wrote a letter, a formal letter to the Commission, and we drafted anti-SLAPP directive, a model bill it's called for some. And we said, okay, we think that you need to legislate this, and here is what we propose you to draft. And we were very happy to see that the package that was proposed later on was very much based on the initial proposal of case. On 3rd of December, we already had the first movements, let's say, from the European Commission. The European Commission set an expert group against SLAPPs. I'm a member of that group with other 30 experts. And we advised the European Commission on the recommendation, also the proposed draft directive. We had meetings regularly, discussed in details every single article. We provided evidence, etc. And then on 26th of March 2022, we launched formally the case. Now, all this work was done by individuals. From 5 people, we became 20, 30. Now we are around 200 individuals. But we didn't have a name of this group, so we branded it as the Coalition Against SLAPPs in Europe, and it was formally launched on 26th of March 2021. But please note that the work that we were doing was, of course, being done also before. This is one of the meetings. It's a lot of women, but we do have men as well helping the case. So the way it works with case, we have meetings. A lot of meetings. Sometimes during the week, up to 5 meetings to coordinate, and we have subgroups. We have a group on EU advocacy, a group on Council of Europe, a group on legal issues, etc. And then every 2 weeks, we meet together and we share all the work that is being done, and we also plan next steps. For all those who want to join a case, it's very simple. You can send an email to us, and all you need to do is to monitor some of the cases. Even if you don't have time to monitor the cases, but you want to receive the emails with a lot of information, that's also fine. Now, what does a case do? The most important aspect of case is the research. This is the research that we publish this year. It's a follow-up of a previous research. So far, we have registered 820 cases. Most of the lawsuits are based on national defamation laws or similar provisions on insult or honor, depending on national law. The most likely targets of SLAPPs are journalists, media outlets, editors, activists, and NGOs. These abusive legal actions are most commonly, I think it was mentioned also by Anda, launched against individuals. Why do they do this? Because they want to isolate the journalists. So targets are individual journalists to the point that then they become a liability for the media company, to the point that they are looked somehow kind of negatively by their own colleagues. But why are you the only one being sued? So it's a strategy of the claimants to go after individuals. The most common SLAPP litigants are business persons and politicians. We've noted a growing number of SLAPPs in Malta, France, Croatia, Greece, the United Kingdom, Turkey, and Georgia. But this research is not conclusive because we have a lot of cases when journalists don't speak about SLAPPs. And this is one of the most difficult aspects of our work. When we started to work on SLAPPs, and I would contact journalists and ask, are you being sued? They hesitated to speak for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, if you are sued after you do some research, investigations, the lawsuit comes with some stigma because there is already, that is an automatic question mark to your investigation. And the idea is that those who are suing journalists, they create confusion in the public. So the public would not know, is this true? But no, let's wait for the result of the court because maybe it's a lie. And so with journalists want to keep their investigation in the public domain and they don't want to redirect the attention to the lawsuit. Secondly, they get advice from lawyers not to speak up. I never agree with this advice of lawyers. I think they should speak up, and there are ways that you can speak up about a lawsuit, not putting yourself in a position to risk further litigation. This is especially in UK, which I really dislike this approach of lawyers, don't speak, don't say a word, and it's not always in good faith. I think sometimes some lawyers, I'm a lawyer, so I can talk about lawyers. And so they want to control the case, they want to have the media attention, etc. And then the result is that we have less data on what is happening to journalists. And the other reason why journalists don't speak is because they don't have the support from media outlets. In most of the media outlets, lawsuits, especially SLAPPs, are not considered a problem that needs to be shared with the public. It's considered as an internal problem, and that's a big issue. What we've done is we've used, and I say this in good sense, the son of Daphne Caruana Galizia, Matthew Caruana Galizia, who left journalism because he's dedicating his life to finding justice for his mother and for fighting SLAPPs. So I would always call Matthew and say, please speak to this journalist and convince him or her why it's important. And it worked. Now we have more data. Then we wrote to the Council of Europe, and we said that we need a self-standing recommendation on anti-SLAPP. For those less familiar with recommendations of Council of Europe is an organization that sets standards. They decide how a problem, an issue with freedom of expression needs to be resolved. And they are very influential. We know this from the protection of whistleblowers. There was a recommendation on protection of whistleblowers, then we have a directive, and we are in a much better place than we were 10 years ago because of that. So we insisted, and at that time it was 104 civil society organizations. Now, as part of case, other things that we do is we provide support to journalists and activists facing SLAPPs, but we also like to name and shame those who go after journalists. How do we do this? We organize the European SLAPP contest. This is 2021, but there was another update, and this year we'll have another one. What is this? Is we make sure that we provide some awards to litigation addict of the year, and we had Croatia public broadcaster being one of them. Croatia public broadcaster like to sue every single journalist that criticizes its own public broadcaster, so they sue them, and we gave them the award of litigation addict. They're addicted to sue their own stuff. We like to provide especially awards to bully lawyers of the year. We have the Carter Rock, the UK-based firms, as the Bully Lawyers of the Year. We have the International Bully of the Year award. This went to Corindo, the German palm oil conglomerate. And then we have Corporate Bully of the Year, SLAPP Politician of the Year. We made sure that the PIS leader, Jaroslaw Kaczynski, gets this award, and we'll have the same this year. So if there are in Latvia, by any chance, anyone who needs to be nominated, please let us know. It's a fair competition, I would say. On 11th of November 2021, you see here Timo Woken and Roberta Metsola, the President of the European Parliament. They issued an INI report. This is a report where the European Parliament called on the European Commission to come up with legislation. On 23rd of November, OSCE also reacted to SLAPPs. Here you see the first meeting of the Council of Europe Expert Committee, MSI-SLP. I am a member of that committee, and we've concluded our work recently. I'll tell more about it. On 1st of February, we sent, these are packages with petitions from across Europe asking Vice President Vera Jourova to act on SLAPPs. On 15th of March, for the first time, the European Court of Human Rights referred to SLAPPs. It's just one paragraph referring to Dunja's blog, but it's a very good start, which gives us an indication that lawyers in the court have an eye on the SLAPP issue. On 27th of April, for the first time, we had the first package on anti-SLAPP proposed by the European Commission. We wanted this to be called Daphne's Law. There was no political agreement, so informally we're calling it as Daphne's Law. On 20th of September, we organized the first European anti-SLAPP conference. This is in Strasbourg. 300 people participated. We issued a declaration and called for further actions. There will be a follow-up conference next year. So for those interested on this conference, save the date, is 19th of November, 2024 in Strasbourg. Again, it will be a lot of people. We will focus on implementation. So if Latvia has some progress until next year, then this will be the venue to promote the country. By now, we have a draft anti-SLAPP recommendation. I am biased because I'm a member of the committee and one of the drafters of the recommendation. But if it is approved as it is, it will be a very strong instrument. It will go to CDMSI on 1st of December, and if it is approved, then it goes to the Committee of Ministers, and we should have the recommendation very soon. The EU draft directive, very concerning developments. The Swedish presidency weakened the first draft. They removed the key elements of the directive. The trilogue is continuing. The last meeting is on 29th of November. If those elements are not put back, then the directive will be useless. And this is our biggest worry. We'll have to see. I still have hope. I'm approaching the end of the presentation. As case, we do have national initiatives in different countries, UK, Italy, Spain, Germany, Scotland, Netherlands. These are case working groups, which consist of civil society, lawyers, activists, who are designing national policies and recommending the governments to act. Some of them are very successful. In UK, we have the first anti-SLAPP provisions in some legislation, not to go into details. So I would invite Latvian colleagues to start working on this. It's absolutely worth it. What's next, and I will conclude with this, to continue, for us at CASE, is to continue to act in solidarity with SLAPP victims and targets, to expose and fight back all those who enable SLAPPs, and I mentioned here also the important role of lawyers, and to continue to advocate for legislation. That's it from me. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you very much indeed for a very informative talk. Tagad ir iespēja uzdot jautājumus pirms nākamās prezentācijas, kuras autore ir Eiropas parlamenta deputāta Dats Melbārdas kundze, bet ir šobrīd, vai ir kādi jautājumi, komentāri, replikas?
Yeah, paldies. What was the thing? You mentioned that Swedish presidency removed something. What was exactly what did they remove?
Can I have the pointer? Yes.
Yeah, that was a question from Tom Sostrovskis from one of the largest internet news site, TVNet.
Yeah. So here, I thought that there will be a question. So, okay, and sorry, it's a good question. I forgot to mention. What is the main request from case with regard to legislation? Of course, it's a long list, but the main thing that we're advocating for is to have early dismissal mechanism. What does that mean? If a journalist is being sued, we want national courts to be able to dismiss the case immediately. We're not advocating for litigants not to be able to file a lawsuit. That would be a problem of access to justice. If somebody thinks that a journalist defamed him or her, yes, they can go to court and they can ask 10 million euros. We want courts to first to give priority to these cases and to say, look, this is a SLAPP based on these indications, and therefore we're dismissing it immediately. In this way, you'll have first respect for access to court, and at the same time, you will not have journalists paying a lot of money on lawyers' fees, etc. These are the elements that have been weakened from the Swedish presidency. The early dismissal, it was much stronger, and I have here a copy of the changes. The directive had a very strong focus on cross-border SLAPPs. We have cases when a journalist reports in Malta, in English, about a business person living and operating in Malta, but this person sues Times of Malta in Bulgaria. And they do this for the only purpose to put additional pressure on them to make it costly, etc. So the idea was that cross-border SLAPPs are not allowed or are made very difficult, and they have removed this part entirely. And also compensation of damages, which is absolutely key for journalists, is removed. The idea is that these elements are put back. And again, I'm not criticizing that much Commission right now, because there is still some hope, but I think after December we'll be able to have a full assessment. But without these elements, if you look at the directive, without these elements, and you analyze based on Daphne's cases, it would not help her, and it will not help other journalists across Europe.
What was the reasoning to weaken this early dismissal and other things? Off the record, if you will.
Off the record, on live. No, I'm an activist and I can say it, and then I can deal with consequences later. From what I've seen, so we've discussed this, it's 5 years now, with a lot of lawyers and civil staff, so civil servants in different countries. I am shocked how selfish these people are. You go to one country, they're like, oh, no, sorry, it's not a problem in Germany. It's not a problem in Austria. And therefore, we cannot address this. So it's pure selfishness, I would say, the reason that lead to this. They are very conservative in terms of their national law, special civil procedure and civil code. And that would mean that they have to amend this. So they're very protective. But what we have shown with the research is that this is a European problem. And I don't really see how a European problem can be solved if it is not solved at the European level. So these are the reasons that we've seen so far. And in some countries, for example, in Germany, I'm a bit surprised because the coalition, the political coalition, has SLAPPs in their political agreement that they signed. So not to have Germany being much more supportive of this, it's a surprise, but as I said, still have hope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, there are a couple of questions coming from the internet platforms, and one is regarding judges. The question is, could you share indicators of SLAPP that could be suggested for judges?
Yeah, okay, so the draft recommendation of Council of Europe has a list of, I think it's around 8 or 10 indicators. If you want, I can read them, but otherwise I can we can organize somehow that we publish these indicators. So basically, the recommendation, which is very different from the directive, provides a list of indicators that will help judges at national level to decide whether a case is a SLAPP or not. And I think I can mention very briefly some of them. And this is a good question, because we've heard a lot of complaints, of course, from judicial actors saying, oh, it will be difficult to decide whether a case is a SLAPP or not. For example, the judges will have to look whether the claimant tries to exploit an imbalance of power. If you have a very powerful person or a powerful business company going after a small media outlet, asking disproportionate damages, that's already an indicator that is a SLAPP. Then you have when we have cases of the legal actions targeting the individual instead of suing the company, that's also an indication. We have cases when the legal action is accompanied by public relations, which are very exaggerated. These are cases when a company would file a lawsuit against journalists and then issue press releases going to media, etc. That's also an indicator that the company doesn't want the case to be resolved in the court, but they want more this PR side. So it's 10 indicators. I would be very happy to share this later with those interested.
Okay, thank you. We have one more, I would say more comment than question, but probably you would like to respond to that. The person who is asking, he or she has a question regarding alternative media. I'm not sure what's meant by that. According academia terms, I would say that those are pseudo media, which just pretending that those are media, but not always following professional media standards. And the question says that if journalists, for example, are writing about the damages of vaccination, this issue is coming out now, and the institutions are fighting against that journalist. And the question is why they don't have opportunities to oppose or to express their views. I mean, the question says that journalists somehow probably don't have opportunity to express their position. I'm not sure if it's full. Yeah,
so I will respond. It's not directly related to SLAPP that I'll respond. First and foremost, I believe in science and I believe in facts. And I know there is a lot of discussions about vaccination and corona and COVID, etc. I do trust the World Health Organization and public institutions when they give guidance. And I think in all the countries, it was very challenging for journalists to report properly, because you had, especially people online, who went after journalists and after public institutions just because they disagreed. The SLAPP issue or the SLAPP work, the main aim is to protect responsible and ethical journalists. And all those journalists who report facts, science, and they make sure that the public is informed properly, they will benefit from this. All those who lie, who want to distort information, who want to create an alternative reality, this does not protect them, and it will not protect them. So it targets all those professional, ethical journalists that are there and whose work is very, very difficult. It's difficult because of a lot of reasons, but it's also difficult because of the online threat they receive when they report facts and they report the truth. But this hopefully will contribute towards defending them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
It's from internet portal Delphi. Question about statistics. Do you have some statistics? How many cases won by journalists and how many cases they lost? And average time in court? 2, 3 years?
Yeah. You're from Delphi, right? Delphi. Just to say, you have a fan. I am a fan of your media outlet. Keep up the good work. We mentioned this in a lot of discussions. we don't have that. And the reason why we don't have that is because it's the same with journalists. To measure the impact of your work is very difficult. And also, for example, ECPMF so far provided €500,000 in 9 years' time, supporting around 200 journalists with lawyers' fees. And we don't have data for all the cases, what happened to those. And that is because we would need a team of 20 people to chase all the cases and to document. So I can't respond on that question. What we know, and this is not it's not scientific, is that every time we've had an event or we contacted journalists, they complain that it takes years. In some countries it's 2 years, in some countries up to 7 years. But we don't have this data, and the European Commission also, I think, they tried to collect this data. It was very difficult to collect it.
Vēl kāds jautājums, lūdzu, šeit? Ja nav, if no the questions from the public here, then there is one more question coming from platforms. Is there anything that can still be done to influence the content of the upcoming EU directive?
Yes, a very good question. So first and foremost, I think from where I am here in Latvia, I think if you speak to your Minister of Justice, I don't know him or her, but there is still time, because if you have one member state saying during the trilogue that we want a strong anti-SLAPP directive, it makes a huge difference. So if somehow you can speak to your Minister of Justice and also Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think that would make a huge difference. And secondly, joint case. We're now preparing a statement, a reaction, and if we have more people joining that reaction, it makes a difference, because we know that the Council, the European Commission, and the Parliament listens to what the civil society is saying. And thirdly, I think this is a kind of a general suggestion. In the next 6 months, we will have the first standards on anti-SLAPP. Most likely we'll have the directive, hopefully a strong one, and we will have a recommendation. So Latvia needs to start preparing the changes that you need to do at national level, legislation, policies, etc. So this is really the right time to start preparing and to start working with the government together. It's not easy, so I'm not saying this lightly, but it's the right momentum to start working on this topic.
Okay, thank you. Vai vēl ir? Mums ir vēl dažas minūtes, ja gadījumā ir kāds jautājums no zāles. Man šķiet, vismaz es neesmu saņēmis jaunus jautājumus no tiem, kas internetā. Vēl viens ir, es atvainojos, tūlīt pārbaudīšu. Yeah. One more very interesting question from the freelance journalist. And he or she is asking if SLAPP, I think the anti-SLAPP directive could be, okay. If anti-SLAPP directive could protect me during court cases against me.
Yeah,
freelancer, the person without the direct link with any media organization.
Yeah, so on freelance journalists, couple of things. First and foremost, with the legal fund that we have at ECPMF, we pay special focus and attention to freelance journalists, because we believe that it's very, very difficult for freelance journalists to survive, first economically, and also to do their work. As sometimes they have this breaking investigations, and next day, and they're applauded publicly, etc. Next day, when they start to get threats, legal threats, physical threats, they're abandoned. This is the experience we've seen in a lot of countries, so we give priority. Secondly, the EU the draft directive and the recommendation protects them. In the draft recommendation, freelancers are mentioned specifically. So yes, it supports them. And thirdly, something that I've seen in some countries. So I'm originally from Kosovo, and I do a lot of monitoring of court hearings in Southeast Europe, Albania, Kosovo, and other countries. And it's really, and I go personally, and I'm really touched when I see journalists alone in a courtroom. Most of the time, editors-in-chief, they don't have the time. It's not on purpose that they don't go. But it means a lot for journalists to have on their side physically present editor-in-chief, director of the company, or whoever, because it shows also to the court that they are serious about it. And what I see personally is journalists being left alone. And that's not only that's not helpful, but it's very discouraging for journalists. So these directives, these instruments will help freelancers, but I use the opportunity just to appeal to all those who are in position to help journalists who are facing legal actions and react publicly in their defense. And also, when you have a chance to monitor these court hearings, it's absolutely key, because also judges will see that it's a matter of public interest, and that journalist, he or she, is not alone, and it's not just a private matter.
Thank you for your answer.